Hi, you guys. Welcome to today's lesson. Today, we're going to be talking about surface area. So, if you feel super confident with yesterday's lesson on just area of two-dimensional shapes, then today we are just going to take it to the next level and it will be the perfect way for you to be confident with today's lessons. So, yesterday we talked about finding the area of quadrilaterals and triangles and just reviewed all of those. So surface area is really just doing that over and over again until you find all of the faces of a three-dimensional shape. So here we have a triangular prism. If I were to show you the net of the triangular prism, you will see that it is just a bunch of two-dimensional shapes. So I have two triangles and I have three squares, or sometimes those can be rectangles. So when we're finding the surface area, there's really three questions that you want to ask yourself. So the first question that you want to ask yourself is, how many faces does your shape have? And in this case, this triangular prism has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I would need to know how many faces it has. And then I'd ask myself the second question, what are the shapes of those faces? Well, here I have two triangles and three squares. And then the third question is, how do I find the area of each of those shapes? Well, to find the triangles, I would times the base and the height and then divide it by 2. And for the squares, I would just do base times height. Now, here is the number one thing you have to keep in mind when you are finding the surface area is if we can find the area of each of these shapes, that's awesome. But what sometimes happens is that we don't keep ourselves organized and we lose track of all of the areas that we have found. So it's really important that we know which ones we have found the area of and then adding those all together in an organized way. So keeping yourself organized with surface area is going to be your best friend. So let's go back to this slide and we're going to look at rectangular prisms today. So rectangular prisms, I'll show you. Here's an example of one. It's just a bunch of squares and rectangles. That's really all it is. So when I unfold this net, you will see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. So we're going to go back to that first question. How many faces does this shape have? Well, it has 6. So that means we're going to be finding 6 areas. And what are the shapes of those faces? Well, they're squares and rectangles. So because of that knowledge, now I know the formulas I'm going to have to use to find the area of them before I add them all up. So I'm going to be using the area base times height or length times width. And I'm going to do that 6 times. But because we're focusing on rectangular prisms today, I'm going to teach you a little speed up trick. So first of all, let's take a look at the net of a rectangular prism. And we're going to look for a pattern here. So I'm going to show you that these all, so here we have this rectangle, and right over here on the other side, we have an identical friend. I thought this mouse would be easier, but it's not. That is really ugly. So we have these two rectangles that are exactly the same. And the reason that's important to know is that we can actually make less work for ourselves because if I have two rectangles that are exactly the same, I really only need to find it once. And then what can I do with that? I can just double it, right? Well, here's the cool thing about rectangular prisms. That doesn't just happen once. It happens here. It also happens with these two rectangles. And then we have yet again a third set of rectangles that are exactly the same. So because of that information, really, I don't have to find the area 6 times. I only have to find it 3 times. And that is a speed up trick. That's let's see, let's go back to the cursor here. It's a way that we can make things a little easier for ourselves. So let's go to this rectangular prism right here. So knowing those 3 questions, how many faces does it have? What are the shapes of those faces? And how do I find the area of those faces? Well, a rectangular prism only has one formula that we have to worry about, which is base times height or length times width. So here, if we have every single face, that means we have 6 areas that we have to find. But just like I mentioned before, we have 6 rectangles, and this is a really great way to keep yourself organized is to make a table or to make some kind of a list or a T-chart or something that's going to help you keep all this information organized. So here we have 6 different rectangles, and we have really only 3 answers because all of them have an identical twin. So you will notice that we have these 2 that are exactly the same, and we have these 2 that are exactly the same, and then we have these 2 that are exactly the same. So you'll notice that we really only need to find 3 different answers. But once I have those 3 answers, I do have to double them because really we know that there are 6 faces, right? Okay. So let's move on, and we're going to talk about the formula. So knowing that information, that we have basically three different areas that we have to find, and then doubling those, here is the formula for surface area of a rectangular prism. So we're going to take the length times the width. That will give us the area of rectangle number 1. And then the length times the height, which is rectangle number 2. And then the height times the width, which is rectangle number 3. I add all of those together, and then I just double it because, like I mentioned before, all of them have an identical little buddy that we don't need to find it twice. We can just find it once and then times it by 2. So here, let's look. We have a rectangular prism that has the net laid out for it as well. So this guy right here, so this rectangle right here is going to be this one laid out in the net. And then we'll find a different color here. Let's use red. Okay, this front rectangle is going to be a length of width and a height of 4, or a length of 5, excuse me, and a height of 4. And so it's going to be this guy right here. But you will notice that they all, again, have an identical twin. So then I'm going to find this top one, which we don't have yet. And that one is going to be 5 times 3, which is going to be this one right here. Okay, so here is the correlation between the three-dimensional figure and its two-dimensional net. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at the surface area of this shape. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can solve this. So looking at the surface area of this rectangular prism, I can always go back to this where I list all of the rectangles and I find 6 of them, or I'm going to show you a little speed up trick. Okay, so here I have 3 numbers that I'm going to be dealing with. I have the length, which is 7. I have the width, which is 5. And I have the height, which is 3. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I am going to list all 3 of those numbers. I'm just going to put them in a row. So I have 7, which is my length, 5, which is my width, and 3, which is my height. Now I'm just going to pair these up and I'm going to multiply them to find the area of each rectangle. So I'm going to use 7 and 5 first. So 7 times 5 is going to give me this rectangle right here. So 7 times 5, that gives me 35. Okay, now I'm going to times the next 2 numbers, which is 5 and 3, and that's going to give me this rectangle right here. So 5 times 3 is going to give me 15. And then I'm going to multiply the last 2 numbers, which is 7 and 3, which is going to be this rectangle right here in the front. So 7 times 3 is 21. Okay, so now I'm going to add these 3 numbers together, which is 35 plus 15 plus 21. And that gives me a total of 11 on this side. And then 5, 6, 7, so 71. Now I'm not done. Remember, this is only 3 areas and we know there's 6 faces. But I'm going to take that 71 and I'm going to times it by 2. And that gives me a total of 142. Now remember, anytime we're finding the area, we want to make sure that we do it in square units. So this right here is my grand total of the surface area of all of these put together. Now I want you to notice down here, I like to call this the smiley face method. So I put my length, my width, and my height in just a row. And then I multiply the two pairs up here, and that makes a set of eyes. And then I multiply my final pair down here, and that makes the mouth. You will notice I made a little smiley face. So that's going to help you to find the three different rectangles. And then we know because they all have a buddy, we are just going to multiply it by 2, and that gives us our total surface area. Okay, now I'm going to Okay, now we are going to try one. You're going to try one on your own. So I'm going to move to the next slide. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Actually, yeah, we're not afraid of decimals, are we? Okay, I'm going to put this in present mode, and I want you guys to try out that method that I just showed you. And if you need to go back and look at that again, that would be great. I want you to try this one on your own. So I'm just going to go through the steps one more time. I want you to list these three numbers in a row. I want you to use the smiley face method by multiplying these two numbers, and then the smiley face at the end, and then multiply that, all of those added together, and then multiply it by 2. So I'm going to have you guys pause here, try it on your own, and then we're going to do it together. So go ahead and push pause now. Okay, so let's talk about what you guys found. And I'm sorry, I forgot to put it in present mode. So let's go ahead and look at what we can do here to solve this surface area. So I'm going to list all three numbers in a row. So I have 8, 4.5, which is the same as 4.5, and 7. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply these two numbers, which is 8 times 4.5, and that gives me 36. Okay, now I'm going to multiply 4.5 times 7, and that gives me 31.5. And I'm going to multiply 8 times 7, which gives me a total of 56. Okay, now I'm just going to hurry and add these together. So I'm going to add 36 plus 31.5 plus 56. So I'm going to add all of those together, and that gives me a grand total of 123.5. And because all of these have an identical twin, I'm going to go ahead and times that by 2. And that gives me a total of 247. And that would be 247 square inches. All right, now I'm going to put it in present mode this time. So I'm going to put this in present mode, and I want you to push pause. I want you to try to find the surface area of this rectangular prism. Okay, go ahead and push pause. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to come out of present mode, and we are going to solve this one together. So once again, we can do it another way as well. We could list all of the rectangles and do them in the chart just like that. But for the sake of time, because this is getting a little bit long, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to step you through it just with my words, and then you can check yourself to see if you're right. So first, I'm going to take these two, 12 times 15, and that gives me an answer of 180. Okay, then I'm going to do 6 times 15, which is 90. And then I'm going to take these two, which is 6 times 12, which is 72. Okay, now I'm just going to add them all together, and I'll give you your total. So 180 plus 72 plus, I can't even read that, plus 90. Okay, so 90 plus 180 plus 72. And that gives me a total of 342, but that's not my answer. So don't stop there. Some of us are going to be very tempted to just add them together and then be done. You're not done. You have to take that total and then you have to double it because we don't have 3, we have 6 faces, and we have to remember that. So your grand total should be 684 square inches. Okay, let's try one more. And then we're going to call it good. Okay. So I'm going to put this in present mode. Again, push pause and go ahead and try this one on your own. Push pause now. Okay, so let's take a look. So again, we have 15 and then we have 2 3s. So I'm going to put all 3 of these numbers, 15, 3, and 3, and I'm going to use my smiley face method. Smiley face, there's the 2 eyes, and here's the mouth. I'm going to multiply these 2 together. 15 times 3, that's 45. 3 times 3 is 9, and 15 times 3 again is 45. I'm going to add 45 plus 45 plus 9. And that's going to give me 99. I take that total and I double it or times it by 2. And your grand total for this one is going to be 198. Not just feet. Remember, whenever we're finding area, it has to be in square units. So it's going to be square feet. Okay, so I hope you guys followed along. I hope that you practiced those. I'm going to go ahead and end it here. So I want you to try this method, try the smiley face method. If it is easier for you to make a chart and put all of those areas and find all the faces and then add them together, that's fine too. I just wanted to show you a little speed up trick so that you guys can find this surface area using a formula and using kind of that little shortcut so that we can find it a little bit more efficiently. So I hope that you guys had the practice. I hope that it makes sense. Please reach out to me or reach out to your teachers if you have any questions at all. And then you'll have other opportunities to practice this skill as well. Go ahead and try this on your own. Have a wonderful day, and we will talk to you later.